Good afternoon. We'll give a few minutes for everyone to get on to the webinar. And everyone should be getting on at this moment. Okay. Welcome to the All You Serve Atheon webinar. We're going to give another minute or so for people to sign on. It's exactly 3 o'clock now, so we're going to give people another minute or so. People are coming on just to sign on to it. So hopefully you can hear me, and there's no problem with sound. You want to make sure. So give us another minute and we will get started. Okay, just giving another minute for everyone to get on. All right. Please forgive us. We're just going to give people another minute to get on. Okay, we're going to get started. So welcome to our webinar. Hopefully we'll have no problems with technology or sound. So again, welcome to our webinar today, and we're going to discuss robotic delivery for your healthcare operations. Two presenters are today is myself, Marsha Diamond, and I'm the president and CEO of the Diamond Approach, and I'm a consulting company that works with food service clients in the areas of sales, branding, marketing, product launches, trade show initiatives. I work with my background of food service, business, culinary, and nutrition to assist businesses in improving their brand loyalty and blending the right solutions to deliver the right products. And today we also have Chris Anderson. And Chris is a successful senior healthcare sales and marketing executive with direct hands-on management experience in setting strategy and driving growth. He has an in-depth knowledge and experience in sales, marketing, product marketing, branding, communication, advertising, and public relations. And his areas of expertise are autonomous mobile robotics, hospital transport logistics, patient flow technology, HIS systems, electronic medical records, pharmacy information, and pharmaceutical products. He's a graduate of St. Olaf College in Minnesota with a BA in biology and has earned an MBA from Georgia State University, Atlanta, Georgia. So thank you, Chris, for being on, and thank you, Atheon and Lakeside and All You Serve for hosting and sponsoring our webinar today. So getting started, many of you have come to learn that robotics, AI, are really going to be here to stay. And how to integrate in your operation is what you have to figure out and what you have to think about. So today we're going to give you the scope and parameters to utilize mobile robotics. We're going to focus only on mobile robotics today. Meal delivery, environmental, laundry, and retail venues. We're going to give you some efficiencies and ROI so you can have it and understand it when you present to your management or to your C-suite and to your staff. And we're going to give you a better understanding of the value proposition so that you know mobile robotics are going to work as team members with your satisfaction. Now, many of you have heard this. The future of automation, the Jetsons, it's here to stay. I don't know if anyone saw the Saturday Night skit, but there was a Saturday Night skit a few weeks ago, and it was on the Jetsons. And so, again, robotics are here. We just have to figure out how we're going to embrace it. Whether it's an Alexa, AI intelligence, whether it's a dish machine, whether it's a meal delivery bot, it's here to stay. So let's understand it. We're glad you joined us today to learn more about it. Again, AI, mobile delivery, and robotics is not only for food service, but it's going to be used throughout multiple industries. And so understanding how food service and how we can use it to consider it a value in the process flows and the workforce allows you to understand how you can save steps, save time, and maybe be more efficient. So it'll help you think about execution of your operation. If you think about your operation now, what do you think can be improved upon when it comes to mobility or mobile delivery? When you look around your kitchen, going from the tray to the patient room, when you think about your cafeteria and delivering it to a wing, when you think about your residents, where can you save steps? Those are the kind of things to start to think about. How can you simplify the life of an operator and become more effective in how you're doing this? Again, robotics allows you to kind of look at the accuracy of what you're doing and benchmark where you can improve the accuracy. You also drive more sales. If it's retail, you can drive more sales. So again, when I got this information, Dishcraft was really looking the research at the crisis. Obviously, there's a labor crisis. Many of you are shaking your heads, yeah. It's only going to get worse. And the idea is Dishcraft, as well as other companies, are just thinking about how they can participate or give their best approach to dishwashing. And so they've actually launched, as of a week and a half ago, their product line for dishwashing in a dishwashing room. And obviously, you need one human and then one robotic dishwasher to get your efficiency. But again, there are many companies that are looking at ways of how do you maximize efficiencies with minimized labor, and it's through technology. So, tugs, robotics, automation. Remember the years of automation, of automats. There are things like food lockers. All of that helps you supplement your existing workforce. Did you know that your servers walk almost 5 to 9 miles a day, probably, between what they do? So think about that, how the efficiencies, the tedious tasks they do, how are you going to invest in them? By doing this, you're investing in them. And so that's kind of the approach that you have to take. You're investing in them. Now, I've always heard there's debate. And people say, well, why is there debate? Because people say the robots are taking over. They're not taking over. They're a tool. They're a resource. Do you use a screwdriver? Do you use a microwave? Do you use a combi oven? They're a tool. It's using robots and bots and machines as team players, working together. So, I get a lot of times people will say, well, they're just going to take over. They're not, because you don't have people doing this. The efficiencies it's having. So if you look at the right corner, there's a university that's using for retail, and the person does a pickup point outside the point of contact. A lot of universities, instead of having them come in, they'll have a point of contact between 2 dorm rooms, between 2 halls, and so that's the delivery point. So the bot will go to that, and the ability then to take the food from there. So again, closing the amount of steps that they do, making it convenient, bringing the hot food or cold food to them. Again, the efficiencies of that. Bots, again, those bots line up, and they're lined up, and then you, just like you would do a meal delivery tray, they kind of line up with what areas, what points of destination they're going to go to, and they're filled in there with the food for that person. There's security, there's all the components of that that's built in. Then you have a bot on top that just bring over maybe a refreshment. And those kind of bots, the bear robots, are good in like a retail establishment or a residential dining where you have like a cafe where someone can bring it over. It also gives them a novelty and a talking point. Obviously, it's more independent living versus an assisted living unless someone's going to take the food off of it and then hand it to them. But you have all kinds of to help assist and replace so people don't have to hurt about their back hurting or the components of that. These robots, in case you wanted to know, they're called bear robots, penny robots, if you want to look them up. Those kind of robots, you'll start to see more and more coming out, again, and getting improved to security, for safety, getting much more improved. And there's a central location where they're held and moving on from there. PepsiCo came out with the first on their campus, which is a B&I campus, obviously business and industry. They deployed it on their campus in Westchester first. And then they got involved and they started to deploy it on college campuses to support the components. Now, if you've ever been to the PepsiCo in Westchester, it's a very big, like a college campus. It's the same principle. People are all in different buildings, and how do you get food to them? And it's the same thing happens on a university that's spread out. How do you get food to them efficiently, keep your retail up? So those are reasonings. Things come out because of reasoning. The other thing is you can order snacks, and again, they order the snacks, the students on a mobile device, and then there are 50, in this particular case, there are 50 designated drop points between 9 and 5. But every university will be a little different. Each bot can travel about 20 miles on a single charge. On the bottom are your meal delivery tray robots, and they can be customized or personalized to your patient population, to your brand of your facility. And what they do is they take the tray from point A to point B, and then at point B, your ambassador or someone takes it off. They take up trays from that point. So again, the saving of steps and miles. I hear this always, and I read the listservs. We're always looking for ways to improve productivity. This presents an opportunity. Think about it. Embrace smart equipment. Interesting enough, you know, I'm in a hospital that has a robotic delivery system, and someone, you know, a patient was near me, and I heard them getting very nervous. Why? Because they thought they can understand what they're talking about. Number two, you know, they were in a wheelchair, so that they're not going to be able to, they're going to hit into them. Again, educating your population, writing it in the newsletter that these are coming, having the new local news come in, and communicate among your staff, transparency to let people embrace smart equipment. Don't just make the transition, but embrace it. And don't settle for what's available. If you need a specific need, you ask the vendor if that is able to be modified and customized so that it fits your needs not only for today, but as you move ahead for the next few years. The one thing that I have found with these meals is it's a patient satisfier. Food gets more timely, it's safer, it's hotter, because people are going from point A to point B. Interesting, when room service first came out, the software tracked the tray delivery person to make sure that they get there in a timely manner. You wouldn't have to do that. You wouldn't have to start tracking. You would track electronically the robotics. But the human component of that, they wouldn't feel like they're being watched. They would just be giving their energies and their motivation and their passion to delivering and having the human touch with the high tech. So there's a lot more, rather than someone being tracked, that they're disappearing and they're not doing the fastest approach for time. And as you can see in the corner, there's a robot with a human. kind of how we have to think about the future. How do we collaborate and compete autonomously? Why bother looking at this point? Now it's 2020. Labor, labor, labor. I know you can hear this, but listen, I remember I'm in the industry 40 years, and I heard this problem 40 years ago. Well, it hasn't gotten better, and it's only getting very much worse proportionately. So if it hasn't gotten better, we need to think about something in a component of what's going on, how are we going to gain efficiencies, and so taking a look at that. Now, some people may say, well, what's the cost? Well, that's where we're going to talk about the ROI, but remember, the robots don't need workers' comp, and you have control over direct labor costs and indirect labor costs. You can improve the timeliness of your service. You can expand upon your day parts because now you can use people and robotics differently. And you can reduce your food waste because obviously things are being sent up, they're taken off, they're in the carts, they're going to get them on a more timely basis. And I have to tell you, for most people that I've come across that are involved in this robotics or these box deliveries are really thrilled. They embrace it. They like the person taking it off and handing it to them. It becomes much more. If you think about years ago, making a car, everything was done, every unit. Then you got automation. Basically, efficiencies came out of that. Okay, and there are going to be those naysayers that say, "Oh, but it took over the." Again, you didn't have the people to do the job. So yes, you may have had some, but you didn't have enough to produce the car. So again, you're always going to have naysayers, but you have to show them what the value is. And ultimately, employee morale and retention is an amazing thing with these. But again, embrace the employees. Show them what you're going to do. Show them the changes, why, and give them the value to them, and then also the value to the patient.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Marcia. Welcome, and thank you all for participating in today's webinar, as Marcia said, to discuss robotic delivery. Can everybody hear me? Okay. In your healthcare operations. Thanks, Marcia and the Lakeside team. My name is Chris Anderson, and I'm with Aethon, based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And to begin, I might need to act. Oh. Do I have control, Marcia?
You do. You do.
There we go. Well, how can I get back one?
I did.
Oh, okay, we are. So to begin, I'd like to highlight some general economic trends, specifically within the U.S. Healthcare arena, that impacts the challenges we'll be discussing here today. As you all may observe already in your daily businesses working with hospitals, labor shortages are becoming an issue, specifically as a result of the strong economy today, and I'm sure we've all heard the highest level of employment rather in 50 years or so. So this is driving a widening gap between the number of openings and the ability to find and hire staff. Also, the population is trending older and contributes to increases in healthcare spending. Not to mention, some other stats are showing that there's fairly high turnover rate for some of these lower level or entry level jobs in the healthcare space. There we go. Along with the increases in the openings in a shrinking pool of available workers, the hourly wages are trending upward to compete for those hires, making it more difficult to fill those specific jobs. Okay, so let's look at some facts about the internal delivery logistics in hospitals today. Suffice it to say, hospitals move a lot of stuff on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and it's not just food service items. Here's some information we've collected that shows, real results of the massive distances traveled in this 200 plus bed hospital. And again, in a manual operation, that means staff. This is people that are walking these distances. And as an aside, it's, for some of you that are also in other industries, these challenges are found not just in hospitals, but in hotels, casinos, resorts, other large hospitality venues. And they all have to move a lot of stuff. So they're also encountering these similar issues. I'm having a slight delay on the slide, so bear with me as I move. There we go. So further identifying some of the logistical challenges as it relates to manual transport, aside from just the sheer volume that we mentioned, that hospitals need to maintain quality, meaning, as Marcia had mentioned earlier, meaning hot food delivered hot and in a timely fashion. They're tasked with doing this over long distances, as we looked at, not just over time, but in a single trip. Both horizontal distances, vertical distances, so long hallways, and a lot of elevators, a lot of floors. And in manual operations, adding the human element to it adds variability, which, as we know, can contribute to delivery delays, a long total turnaround time, not to mention just general wear and tear on the staff. And not all of these staff are older, some are younger. Some of them tend to be advanced in age. The loads can also be very heavy, adding the risk of injury. As I'm sure you in your travels have seen in many hospitals, these long distances can also include ramps. So going up or down a ramp with a heavy cart adds risk and complexity to their tasks. This has the potential to contribute to increasing workers' comp costs, the cost of hiring replacements, training and retraining. And the other side of the coin is most of these folks transporting items. They also have other equally or more important daily tasks. So they're oftentimes not being utilized to their highest and best use of their talents. All right, so let's look at transitioning from a manual transport process, to the benefits of automation. Key to the benefits is improving productivity and efficiency, resulting in better throughput and the ability to do more with less. These gains lead to improved satisfaction to guests or patients, which is the ultimate goal, to increase patient satisfaction. Quicker deliveries, for example, again, we've talked about this. If food is supposed to be hot, it should be hot and served in a timely fashion. In rethinking a hospital's workflow by adding automation, it allows them to sit back, look at that, and change their existing paradigm. For example, instead of having staff spend that inordinate amount of time that we've talked about moving through the halls and the elevators, many hospitals that have gone to this call-up room service model, they've repositioned some of their staff to the nursing units to, again, meet the robots, deliver food, assist if necessary, even explain or take orders for the morning meal, for breakfast, for example, and add more of a personal face-to-face touch to the patient's experience. They can also manage and expedite the returns, so soiled trays aren't sitting around for too long. It's visually unappealing, and oftentimes nurses are having to do that, so it offloads some of the nursing workload. And again, just to touch on this a second time, it's not uncommon for hospitals, when they do their patient sat surveys, for their scores to increase after adding automation, specifically as a result of the improvement of that meal service delivery, adding that human touch as well. The removing the manual transport piece also leads to a reduction in injuries, as we've alluded to, and all of the subsequent costs and challenges associated with that. And again, it tends to allow the staff that are interfacing with the patients to feel more valued, leads to job satisfaction, and reducing the turnover. And okay, so let's quickly review. Let's see some of the. One second. Bear with me 1 second here. So I'm sorry. Yeah, so the cost benefits is what I want to talk about next. Is they're key. Obviously, we talked about costs, managing staff, hiring, replacing the injuries. But with a robot, you can mitigate those issues, and indeed, robots in many cases can be potentially utilized 3 shifts with just minimal charging in between. So you're able to, that fixed asset is actually able to be used almost as three FTEs. And as we talk about operational benefits, they're very apparent as well. It allows hospitals to look at their workflow. I mentioned earlier, they can sit back, look at their workflow and identify options to change the way they're doing things today, with an eye towards, maximizing the benefits of the robots. So knowing what it can do and then applying different ways of utilizing that. We talked about the repositioning of staff, for example, to the nursing units, but automation also removes the variability in transport delivery, as I mentioned before. So by taking the human component out of that and the things that they may do, we're able to be much more reliable and reduce that variability. We've discussed some of these, but with automation and the ability to capture that data and that information, such as what was it, as Marcia mentioned, what was the trip time, where are delays being found, et cetera, all available in a solution like this. It allows you to measure results and tweak things as necessary. One of the terms that I like to use, or adages that I like to use, is that you can't improve what you can't measure. And we're focusing on food delivery services here, but automation, as we know, is beneficial throughout the hospital. So, for example, if dealing with meal services, other areas of the hospital, environmental services, lab, pharmacy, linen, they start to see this as a kind of a proof of concept and then engage with the robots as well. So let's quickly review some real life results. This hospital, by analyzing our numbers, the number of meals, the routes, staffing, and their staffing requirements, they were able to add a new tower by leveraging the robotic delivery, and found that they were able to avoid the large staff increase to accommodate that new tower. And ultimately, they were still able, with the reduced amount of FTEs, they were still be able to meet the demands and the turnaround time goals.
And if I can add, Chris, if I can add,
sure.
It's not that you get rid of people, it's just you are reallocating them or re-engineering their positions to use them in a better or more practical approach to get more maximized satisfaction. And also, you do have the point of people retiring. So, you may at a point where you have to reduce FTEs, and so if somebody is retiring, an early retirement, or is retiring, you would not have to increase that FTE, but you would be able to reallocate those hours in your budget for something like that.
Exactly. And that is 100% right, but it also, going back to some of the statistics that we talked about earlier, it's tough for these hospitals to find the staff anyway. So it's really kind of, accomplishing 2 goals there. So just adding some others, this was a hospital that added an additional just over 200 beds with this room service model. So ordering on a call-in basis with they set a 45-minute order to delivery time. And they were actually able to save. They looked at their projections, and then utilizing the robots were actually able to save, hiring 3.9 FTEs. Another large academic healthcare institution did the same type of research. They wanted to go to a room service model, and they found that they were actually able to reallocate staff. They did not need to hire any additional, and over time, as Marcia mentioned, through people quitting or retiring, they did not have to add staff to accomplish those goals. So what does automation look like? We've talked a little bit about it. Marcia showed some of the slides up there, but let me talk about kind of two styles of automation. You may have heard the term AGVs, or automated guided vehicles. They've been around for a while. They're oftentimes used in large manufacturing facilities, back of the house type stuff. They're also used in hospitals very successfully as well. They require infrastructure guides to be built into the floors, or in the facility. So they require either a track or magnet beacons. They have fixed home and destination locations that can't be easily changed. AMRs, or autonomous mobile robots, is kind of a new take on robotics. And these are fully autonomous vehicles that can travel the hallways freely. They can they can avoid obstacles. They can cross the hallway if they have to. They can call elevators. They can open motorized doors, and are not restricted to any sort of hard infrastructure that's been installed into the facility.
Chris, could you go back
Okay.
and just describe each one we saw so that we know before what it is for? Oh, here we are.
Yeah, here's a couple of different types of, and I've got some better pictures later on that we'll show, but what we're looking at here is, on the left-hand side are cabinet robots, or drawer-style robots, often used in pharmacy or lab. The drawers there can be, pharmaceutical products, for example, can be loaded into individual drawers, and through biometric access, through keypads and PIN numbers, can travel through the hospitals and up to the nursing units. And when they're met by someone on the unit, they punch in a code, and only the specific products from that drawer will pop open. They take the products out, shut the door, and hit a green button, and the tug will go, or the robot will go on its way. Lab uses them in a door fashion. In the center, we've got, these are exchange robots, so you can use them. A single robot, or a given robot, could be utilized on all four of those carts. Those carts have to have a base that is compatible with the robot, but that tug could be used, as I mentioned earlier, almost 3 shifts in different applications. So it could be environmental services, or linen overnight, food services during the day. On the right, we're also, I mentioned, we're primarily in hospitals, but we're also, these robots are also in hospitality and manufacturing. And these are food service delivery robots for hotels. They also, as you can see on the far right, is a laundry bot robot that are used in hotels. Oh, that's you, Marsha, I guess.
Oh, this one.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, as I mentioned, with this should have been on the screen. I apologize for that earlier, but we had a no added infrastructure. These robots have the ability to automatically pick up and drop off a cart. You can have multiple route types. You can do scheduled runs. So they can go every hour on the hour, every 15 minutes. They can do multiple stops, what we call a milk run. It can stop off at numerous different departments, and then, of course, on an ad hoc or as needed basis. The route types can be easily changed. So if it's not an efficient use, it can be quickly and easily changed. I mentioned earlier that the tugs can actually talk. They can, tell people they're coming upon them. They can say, I'm in the elevator. They can alert people if You don't want the robots to go into a certain unit, behavioral health, for example. It can actually page, alert, have beacons that flash. There are some secure delivery options, as I mentioned, with pharmacy and lab. You can have biometric and secure carts. And also we touched on that they do have the ability, a single tug or an individual tug can be utilized in multiple different departments and work multiple shifts.
So one of the facilities that are using it is Dan Hendroyd, and he was kind enough to give me some background information, and he uses the robots to take meals to the patient care unit. He's integrated it into the new hospital, an outpatient complex that opened in 2015. He's also having a new building being built, and they're integrating it into the new one that is going to be built, I think it's 2024. Robots were added during construction document phases. They really weren't added at that point because they didn't know at that point what they were going to do, but then they added it. And 6 robots were assigned to food service. And I've given you some of his information on that.
Type robots with different voices, crossing corridors, and names, roaming the halls of the University of California San Francisco Zoo Hospital, relieving staff from tedious deliveries.
That allows our staff to focus on the things that people do so well, caring, decision-making, supporting.
The robots can carry up to 1,000 pounds and deliver 6 types of supplies: lab specimens, surgical instruments, bed linen, meals, weight, and medication. There can be scheduled deliveries as well as on demand. The robots can maneuver independently, communicating over Wi-Fi. They can open doors and even help the elevators can travel to different floors. Some of the hallways here are nearly 3 football fields in length. That is a lot of walking for hospital staff, and just one of the reasons why they wanted to use robots to cover all that ground to do some of the heavy lifting.
They made the decision to use the robotic courier. It was based on 3 different tenets: safety for employees, reliability, because we have a schedule, and last but not least, the efficiency.
For example, they can deliver 1,000 meals a day to patients. All of the robots have the building's floor plans embedded into their system. They're also outfitted with more than 30 sensors: the camera, sonar, lasers, and infrared.
Those 4 components actually allow the robot to sense the size of the corridor
to make sure the right patient gets the right bed. The pharmacy bots have built-in fingerprint sensors. The only authorized staff can access them.
They require a specific ID for each medication that goes into the robot, and then a specific ID for each medication that comes out. Only proper use, reliability of the technology by people is what makes it safer.
The staff are voting on names and how they should be decorated. While the robots won't be rolling up to a patient's bedside, that should help with their bedside manner. In San Francisco and Curtis, the boys, see that's on for CBS News.
Sorry about that. Okay. In Dan's site, it is shared between housekeeping, sterile, pathology, pharmacy, material services, linen, and multi-purpose. So he was able to share the cost of getting these and share the ROI for that. And as you can see, this is what their intended use of how they used it there. He said it was a better ROI if more departments utilized. Tugs are like a cart pushed by a person. Everything a person does in transport has to be replicated. Securing content, reacting to objects in the way, reacting to emergency situations, and knowing the most efficient path. So the tugs do that, and departments definitely, you know, kind of look at their best practices, but you know, they're adding 2 more tugs. You know, as we speak, he said because they were able to integrate it in other departments and show the efficiency. Here's his a snapshot of his department. I kind of wanted to give you that and tell you how much he saved, how much productivity. And I did give you one when you get the PowerPoint slide. You will have Dan's number there if you wanted to contact him directly, as well as you'll be able to link on the YouTube video to see more of that.
Okay, and the if anyone is interested and had issues hearing that video, there is a copy of that, or there's a sample of that on our website at athon.com. It has multiple videos if you had trouble hearing that. So getting back to the technology itself now, the technology is proven. It's very safe to use. It utilizes lasers, sensors, sonar, and other safeguards built into the robots to avoid people, stop quickly if necessary. There's even a camera on it that points down to the floor, so there's no HIPAA issues, but points down to the floor, and it can avoid obstacles by navigating around those. So real quickly, in this application of AMRs, the hospital, as you may have heard from the video, or facility is mapped with different locations, you know, beginning home bases and destinations. It looks at elevator locations. It identifies, we're going through the entire floor plan, and we're able to identify stairways, fire hydrants, drinking fountains, all that stuff. All of that is programmed into the brain of the robot, and that is what is used to navigate the facility. It's also, as you can see on the right, it's very simple to use and requires very little training. We'll get into that a little bit here. The user interface, for example, we often interface with a touch screen. So this is selecting which of the robots you're looking to use. Selecting, you know, an available robot, you set its destination.
Chris, a question came up, whether it's an AMR or the track one or AGV, they both have some kind of computer handheld or to navigate. Is that based on directing the logistics with software?
I'm not sure I understand the.
Whether you have an AGV or an AMR, you still have to have logistics of having this backbone of, when I go back here, you still have to have this kind of mapping out. That is correct, right?
Yes, during an implementation, there's a team that goes on site, maps the hospital with another robot. Will, you know, work with floor plans or things of that as well. But that image, all of that knowledge goes into the robot itself. So it is not navigating through Wi-Fi or any other thing. It's autonomously navigating the hospital based upon its location from start. So here, this slide, to whichever of the destination it's going to. So the users are interfacing it. Hopefully that'll answer the question.
Thank you.
And selecting, so as we did, we selected a tug, loaded a cart on it, and then come to the destination. If we want to hit cardio, and someone would just hit go. So it's very simple. Obviously, there's a little bit more to it from administration and reports and all that, but from a daily user interface, it's very, very simple. Let's see. So some of the additional benefits that AMRs are, again, they can actually navigate to the end user if desired. versus a staging area. Some alternatives have a stop area and staff will need to meet them. These can actually go into the nursing units, reducing the amount of time and the distance that anybody would need to interface with it. As I mentioned, it can speak, it identifies itself. Some of the children's hospitals that we have, they dress them up as trains, as you saw in the picture, and as they go down the halls, they'll blow a train whistle. And I also touched on some of the secure options if desired. And as the video also mentioned, that these very, very powerful. They can haul carts up to 1,000 pounds. We have some other models that are even more than that. And so let's look at some of the different types of cart, the varieties. As we saw earlier and in the video, we have wire carts, we have tubs, we have secure carts, and then the self-contained units right here on the right.
How about sanitation for them?
Simple wiping down with a disinfectant is, as you would any other cart. And the carts, as in the carts themselves, we still send those through the cart washers, if they have those. So again, touching on the different types of these specific AMRs, we have the two types. The one in the center, as I mentioned, is a cabinet or a drawer style, and the other two on the right and left are called exchange carts. Those can be used in multiple departments as long as a compatible base is affixed to the cart. There we go. Here are some additional cart types. Meal service carts you'll see on the left, and that looks like it's duplicated on the right.
There was a couple of questions while we're on these carts. Does it use triangulation if it requires no Wi-Fi?
Oh, there we go. It uses more than that. In essence, yes, but knowing the origin and then the destination. Again, it's looking at the map that we've implemented into the robot itself. It's also using something called precision odometry. So as the wheel movement, it's counting all of that, so it knows where it is, how long it's been going, how fast it's going. All of that's calculated into its location. And so it does not use, as I mentioned, Wi-Fi to navigate. It just communicates with the system for calling elevators, for example, through wireless. Hopefully that'll answer the question.
And another question, one of the questions was, is there an ability to communicate with the elevator on where to go if you have patients on there? Or the carts have to go up an elevator. How do you communicate if there's a patient on there?
Yeah, great question. The robot is communicating, again, via wireless to a piece of software, an elevator user interface that would be implemented or installed into however many elevators the robots are allowed to use. And what it will do is it will identify, as it's approaching the elevator, it will ping that, for example, for lack of a better term, and it will identify when there's no cabin calls pushed and no floor calls pushed. And once it identifies an empty cabin, and it's doing this in nanoseconds, it can take that cart out of circulation. So it'll shut the door, it's empty, it's going to be driven directly down to the floor that the robot will be there. So the robot can move right up to the doors of the robot. As soon as the elevator gets there, it'll open, the doors will open rather, the robot will go in and the doors will shut, and then it goes directly to the delivery floor, so it's not stopping all the way up. And then it releases that elevator car back into general circulation. So it's actually a very efficient way of moving the tugs exactly to the floor without the multiple delays.
Okay.
And all right, so getting back, I think I was one slide back.
One slide back. Here you are.
No. So just a little bit about our organization. We're currently in probably over 200 hospitals in the U.S. and abroad, with over 750 robots in use today. We're a sole source provider for AMRs for VA hospitals, and we've implemented the tugs in multiple departments as we've touched on. And I mentioned that we do not require infrastructure, but in one of the benefits of that is a lot of hospitals are building either brand new hospitals or new towers, and we're able to transition from existing facilities to the brand new facilities without adding any infrastructure and the associated costs to that.
Okay.
And these are just some of the customers that are currently utilizing robots. And you can see the different various departments. And so real quickly, kind of in summary, talk about the value of automating these delivery tasks. It's incredible. There's a very significant and rapid ROI. At a higher level, it leads to lower cost per delivery over time, improve efficiencies, and the ways to think about throughput, and certainly directly contributes to the staff satisfaction and of course their safety. Over time, the employees tend to really enjoy working with them. It's taking quite a chore away from what they would normally have to do, and they're able to do other aspects of their job.
So things to consider. We talked about space restraints. In healthcare environments, space is limited. So you need whatever robotics, whether it's the bot or unit or even the tugs for meal delivery or linens, you need to be flexible and multifunctional. Space is limited. Wherever you're storing it, it's got to be able to use for more than one department. The robotic meal deliveries, it improves the consistent quality experience. You've got barista robots, you've got service robots. Even in senior living now, they're starting to have service robots, which are a complement to an aid, bringing a cup of tea. Again, it depends on the skill set of the resident. But use time and motion models to assess the effectiveness. If you were able to do robots, what would it mean? What would it look like? Identify the ways to improve existing processes in order to increase throughput and decrease costs. This is something I know a lot of you do on a daily basis or a weekly basis, looking at different areas that you can tweak. Well, here's another way to look at delivery. If I looked at my delivery, where are the bottlenecks? And also, consumers demand more and more safe food, timely service, consistent quality, and I know a lot of people are saying that patient satisfaction scores, Press Ganey is asking for new questions. Here's a way of kind of putting that experience totally and even answering it for yourselves by putting it out there, putting the best foot forward, so when you present the ROI, that you are incorporating that value proposition of experience. And I can't say it enough, make sure your departments understand the processes with robots, whether it's one or two departments or it's just you, but make sure everyone knows where you're going and why you're going there. So once again, I want to thank you for attending a webinar. There's a couple more questions. So one of the questions came out is asking about, they were asking about cost. That's something I can take off and I'll have Chris get with you as far as cost or anything. And someone asked about looking or trying at one. And again, that's something I can do offline. And someone asked about, is there a life of battery before needing to be charged?
Yeah, that's a good question. The robots in between trips, in between tasks, do what we call opportunity charging. So while they're waiting to be used again, they'll go sit on a charger for 15 minutes, half an hour, an hour, and then we'll go back into circulation. The charging time is, or rather, the battery life is something that it depends. It depends on how much you're using it, heavy, what's the size of the loads, all of that. That being said, as part of our bumper-to-bumper maintenance and warranty program, and we can sense, we take vital signs in essence of the robots, and we know if a battery is either bad or is not holding charge, and what we'll do is simply send another battery out. And those can be either changed on site by the hospital staff, or if they don't have that capabilities, we have teams that go out and can do that.
And for the tug, as well as the bots, which I showed you of the meal delivery, the bots they travel 20 miles on a single charge. So then a lot of those have to be re-plugged in, and those don't necessarily have a docking station, but they have to be able to plug them in an area. Is there a docking station for your units, for the tug?
Yes. If I heard the question correctly, is there a docking station for the units? Yes.
For the tug.
I should have, for the tugs, and I should have mentioned this earlier. The tugs will automatically sit on their dock when they're not in use. They automatically go back there. A person does not need to direct them. So it will continually redock and then immediately start charging. A robot also will not take or accept a job, if it's an ad hoc job, for example, if it does not have the battery life to go from point A to point B and return. All of this technology is reported up to the kind of the brain of the computer or of the tug, and it will not accept the job. It'll search for a different tug.
Okay. So that's all the time we have. Once again, if you have any more questions, please add them here and I will send them to Chris, who will reach out to you. If they're about, other than tugs and about bots or about any other meal delivery, please send me the questions. I can give you some links and some information. Thank you again, All You Serve Lakeside and Atheon, for sponsoring this webinar. The PowerPoint, the video, and the certificate of participation will be available on the All You Serve website under webinars starting tomorrow, and so you'll be able to download it and put it onto your computer. Again, I'm sorry about what happened with YouTube, that deafening echo, but if you go onto the Atheon site, they have the links set up there, and as well as in this PowerPoint, you'll see the URL and be able to go there to see it. Another hospital that has it is Reading Hospital. Geisinger has it, but Reading Hospital, and they made theirs very personalized. They made it like the Jetsons. They have all the Jetsons characters, and not because they have a children's hospital, but because of their population and the demographics, there was a relatability to it. So again, the thing, the front can be made more streamlined for an upper CCRC community. I mean, there are abilities to personalize and customize different robotics as well as tugs, depending on your need, as well as the carts can be customized and personalized so they don't look the stainless steel. They can have that kind of imagery and branding. So thank you again for joining us, and any more questions, just type them in, and I will make sure Chris gets them. And thank you for joining us, and thank you for your time today.